If desperation was a person, Donald Trump is looking like that person. With just weeks before Election Day, Trump is sounding more like a desperate used car salesman trying to get rid of that hooptie by making unrealistic promises about the purchase. Now, remember, just a few days ago, I told you that Trump thought he had Florida and its 30 electoral votes on lock. But the 487,000 Haitians with voting rights in the Sunshine State might have something to say about that ever since Trump slandered their kinfolk in Springfield, Ohio, keeping that lie up about them eating people's pets. Well, after Trump's poor performance at the Univision town hall last week with mostly Latino viewers, it's looking like the Latino vote in Florida is another block of voters that Trump has fumbled. Now, Trump has started to cancel some of his appearances. He canceled his NRA speech that he had scheduled for Savannah, Georgia, and he canceled the NBC appearance. He canceled the MSNBC appearance, and there are a lot of other cancellations on the way. I'm Steffanie Rivers, and you're watching my journal. So, why is Donald Trump starting to cancel? Well, because panic has set in at Trump headquarters over his poor performances. Now, what about his poor performances? Well, let's take a look at that Univision town hall where Trump said protesters showed up, and it was a love fest when he was talking about the January 6th insurrection. If you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first to know. You might have already seen this video, but I want to show it to you now. So stand by. Now, this is him. Watch him, listen to him, and look at the people's faces when they go to the audience.
I am a Republican, no longer registered, though. I want to give you the opportunity to try to win back my vote. Okay. Your, I'd say, action and maybe inaction during your presidency and the last few years sort of, was a little disturbing to me. What happened during January 6th, and the fact that, you waited so long to take action while your supporters were attacking the Capitol. Coronavirus, I thought the public was misled during coronavirus, and that many more lives could have been saved if we would have been informed better. And also people in your administration who don't support you. I'm curious how people so close to you and your administration no longer want to support you. So why would I want to support you? If you would answer these questions for me, I would really appreciate it and give you the opportunity. There's, your own vice president doesn't want to support you now.
Thank you, Ramiro.
Now, before we go on, I just want you to just pay attention to how easily Donald Trump just says things off the top of his head, even though we already know that 40 out of about 44 of his former cabinet members have spoken out against him. Just look at how he handles this. And I am watching the chat, so if you want to come in and comment on anything, I'll be watching the chat.
So the people that don't support, a very small portion, we have a tremendous, about 97% of the people in the administration support me. But because it's me, somebody doesn't support, they get a little publicity. The vice president, I disagree with him on what he did. I totally disagreed with him on what he did. Very importantly, you had hundreds of thousands of people come to Washington. They didn't come because of me. They came because of the election. They thought the election was a rigged election, and that's why they came. Some of those people went down to the Capitol. I said peacefully and patriotically, nothing done wrong at all, nothing done wrong. And action was taken, strong action. Ashley Babbitt was killed. Nobody was killed. There were no guns down there. We didn't have guns. The others had guns, but we didn't have guns. And when I say we, these are people that walked down. This was a tiny percentage of the overall, which nobody sees and nobody shows. But that was a day of love from the standpoint of the millions. It's like hundreds of thousands. It could have been the largest group I've ever spoken before. They asked me to speak. I went and I spoke. And I used the term peacefully and patriotically. If you look at the Democrats.
Okay, that's enough. So it's written all over their faces. They didn't have to say a word. So yeah, apparently some Latinos don't like that you playing in their faces, and their dismay was written all over their faces. So that was one of the many interviews that he did that didn't turn out like he thought it would. Not sure what he thought it was going to say. So Sydney, and you know what, again, I'm going to try to show some of these. Sydney Love is saying that's what I've been focusing on. So people are looking and listening, especially days away from the election. Sydney saying he makes no sense. Why would the Democrats be upset? He lost. So well, it's just that there are millions of people apparently who continue to believe whatever Donald Trump says. If you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first to know. Now, that was just one interview as to why they're panicking. There was that other interview with the Bloomberg News that didn't go so well, like Trump wanted. Also, when Trump went off on a tangent about pretty much everything, he pretty much avoided answering the questions that were presented to him. The person asking the questions had to say, but you never answered the question, more than once. And then Trump blundered when he said that he would appoint young Supreme Court justices so that they would have longevity. And he said, because appointing old judges was crazy. So then the person said, but you're 78 years old. So he had to remind Trump that he was like old as hell. Trump indirectly is calling the American people crazy for even considering voting for him at his old age. Again, he says things and he doesn't really keep up with what he's saying or how it sounds. So yeah. There was another time, if you know anybody who lives in Detroit, that this rally also happened, or I don't know if it was a town hall or a rally, but it happened in Detroit. And it wasn't insulting enough that Trump degraded the people in Detroit by saying that if Vice President Kamala Harris was voted, if she became president, that the rest of the country would look like inner city Detroit. He said that while talking to people from Detroit. Okay, so no matter how you feel about Detroit or Michigan, that, if you want people to, understand, or you try to appeal to them in a certain way, you try to appeal people, try to have some common ground with them. You don't say, if she wins, it's gonna look like y'all's neighborhood. And so that didn't go over well. And then Trump went as far as in another interview and claimed that assembling automobiles is something that a child could do. Okay. Now, everybody knows that Michigan, another swing state with 15 electoral votes, is the cog in the wheel of the auto industry in America. So he's just out here just talking and insulting people and not really thinking about the consequences. Meanwhile, the people on his team, they have to put up with what he's saying. So Pennsylvania, with its 19 electoral votes, is another swing state that could cause Trump to win or lose what pollsters claim will be a very close election. So instead of treating the voters there with the respect that they deserve by answering the questions and their concerns on issues that they care about, Trump got frustrated because people were fainting in the crowd, because it was hot apparently, in whatever location they were. So again, a lot of videos. I'm going to try to share this one with you. Take a look at what happened. It's only a few seconds. This is Trump, and they're calling it a music fest. People were falling out, and then he says, I mean, I'll see if you can hear it. Oh no, it's gonna, yeah, come up. So that's,
would anybody else like to vent?
Let's do it now.
Please raise your hand. You know what we could do though? If my guys can do it, how about we'll do a little music. Let's make this a musical. Sit. And by the way, when we leave, you don't have to go so fast. You can sit and listen. We'll play a couple of songs.
so then he ends up saying and playing music for 39 minutes, 40 minutes. So yeah, that's what's going on with Donald Trump. And essentially, after that, his team, I guess they were kind of like, what the hell is going on? What is he doing? He's winging it. He's like off script. So now it turns out that Trump has opted out of a lot of pre-scheduled interviews and town halls simply because of this nonsensical display that he's starting to give. Trump's team claims he is mentally and physically exhausted. Frankly, we, the people, are mentally and physically exhausted by his ass. So now he knows how we feel. But why would Trump risk turning off millions of voters in swing states? Well, the same reason why he said he would consider exempting firefighters and law enforcement officers and military service people and veterans from paying taxes, because the concept sounds good while he's saying it, but there's a lot more to it that has to happen, and he is not the only decider. Okay, even if his POTUS is king status is in effect, he still has to have Congress. There's still some rules and regulations. Congress still has to be in on some of these decisions that he's just throwing out there at the last minute, the 11th hour of the election process, trying to get people's attention. So now, despite what Trump would have you think, he is not the decider of such issues. Some things must, again, go through the congressional process. So let's take, for example, his, I do have some people over here in the comments. So Laverne is saying, is that why he did his dance-a-thon? Well, Laverne, I don't know, I don't know. That's a mystery. It's still a mystery why he started dancing up there. But yeah, essentially, I think he just got frustrated because after the third person fainted, the focus was being taken off of him, because he always likes to be the focus, but the focus was no longer on him, and all he knew to do was, okay, let me grab the attention back from the people and let's play music. Everybody likes music, so then so he's just one of those people who loves to be in the spotlight, can't stand to not be in the spotlight. So speaking of him just going off the cuff and saying what he thinks people want to hear, let's take, for example, his vow to deport 11 million undocumented immigrants. Well, that's more than a concept, right? That takes real coordination between federal, state, and local officials. Now, according to Mother Jones, this is a magazine that I read, and I don't know if you know about it. According to Mother Jones, they're saying that would take 95,000 chartered flights and bus trips out of town to deport 11 million people. And it would take more than $300 billion with a B and 20 years to do it. 20 years, not 4, not 1, 20 years. It would take the deployment of the National Guard from various states, as well as deputizing law enforcement agents from state and local departments. It would take all the alphabet boys, the DEA, boys and girls, the DEA, the ATF, FBI, and the National Park Service to deport 11 million people in 20 years. So definitely more than a concept is required to pull this off. Now, after you round up everybody, what will you do with them until you put them on the plane, train, or a bus and send them back to wherever you want them to go? That's where the detention camps would come in. The plan would be to divert the military budget money to pay for holding facilities along the border that could hold 50 to 60,000 people at a time. So this reminds me of, and I wasn't alive at the time. Of course, I hope I don't look like I was born before 1941, but essentially like the internment camps in that held Japanese Americans during when they bombed Pearl Harbor. And then that's kind of, it's giving me like that, like they're going to come up with a reason why they feel like America is under attack. And then they're going to use that to detain certain people vis-a-vis these 11 million or however many who they call undocumented people in America. And then they're going to put them in these detained holding facilities. Makeshift. So now, who would get paid for this massive deportation? Well, companies that already have government contracts for private prisons, companies that already have government contracts for surveillance, for legal services, and for chartered planes. Those would be the people who would benefit from that. And so, could it be that all this talk about deportation of undocumented immigrants has less to do with making America great again and making America safe, and it would have more to do with the money grab for certain people? Because in the end, you have to follow the money. I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump or some of his kids have ownership in some of these companies that would be making millions of dollars off of this deportation plan. So when we hear Donald Trump say things like, illegals are vermin, illegals, are the scum, or they're all they're all criminals, all those things that he says. I truly believe that he is just trying to build a certain detachment, dehumanization of people. And so if he wins and he has the opportunity to put this in play, the deportation plan, then he already has desensitized Americans to feeling some kind of way about what he's doing. And that is important for us to understand, that when he says, oh, if the only way we lose this election is if they cheat, he's already putting it in our minds. Oh, so they might cheat. Oh, well, he said, that's what Donald Trump said. He said they was going to cheat. They said, and so then he's putting in our minds, well, these undocumented people, maybe they deserve to be treated like this because they are less than. So these are kind of the psychological games that people like him play. And so again, what I'm going to try to do is follow the money and see who are some of these companies that would benefit from a deportation program, and who are the owners of these companies, where they're getting their money from. And so that's what I want you to think about. But in the meantime, his team is in panic mode because all this only works if he wins the election. And there are early voting has started in a lot of states. I know they said Georgia early voting has broken records. Over 300,000 people went and early voted on the first day of the process versus back in 2016, I think, or maybe 2020, only 100,000 people had voted on the first day of early voting. So if you're in any of the states, be sure to that have already started early voting. Go ahead and plan out your schedule when you're going to vote. Don't wait until election day. Go and get it done. And if your state is not one of those that has started early voting, then go ahead and look at your schedule for your state so you can be ready and go on and get it out of the way. Don't wait until the last minute to do that, because it's just good to go ahead and do it, and then you don't have to feel pressured about doing it on election day. You just never know what might come up. And yeah, we'll give Donald Trump something to think about. Instead of being thinking about winning, he could be thinking about um, where he's going to spend his time in prison. So one last comment. Sydney says, I'm wondering why he is a candidate when he hasn't met the criteria for I'm trying to show it. When he hasn't met the criteria of his first attempt. He doesn't turn in required documents, but is still in the race. Exactly. The latest thing, Sydney, is that Donald Trump did not release his health records. His yeah, and so of course Vice President Kamala Harris released hers, and they said she's in good health. But he just wants us to take his word for everything, and we already know his word is worth nothing. So I don't, if it was anybody else, but we know this would not be allowed. Okay. So the people who are accepting this, they have to ask themselves, why are you accepting such low standards and non-compliance from somebody like Donald Trump? Like, they have to ask themselves that. We already know. If it was anybody else other than 78-year-old, say he's rich white man, this would not be happening in America. But, we are in America, so gotta expect it. So that's it for now. To find out more about the things that I care about, I didn't even put up my banner, but to find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. That's at eurweb.com. Thank you so much, and have a super day.